What if One Piece characters looked a little less One Piece and a bit more real? That's what I was wondering when I drew this picture. And in today's video, I'm going to fully render that picture using alcohol markers and colored pencil, a One Piece character in my art style. If you are a One Piece fan, then the word realism doesn't exactly come to mind when watching or reading One Piece. This isn't the first time that I've taken a One Piece character and put them into my own art style, which is a bit more realistic. And I think because the character design of a One Piece character is so crazy and wacky and out there, is why I find it so interesting to try to envision what a One Piece character would look like in a more real setting. And you may have already guessed the character that is the subject of this piece, but it might be a bit difficult for some people to figure out since I'm saving a lot of his defining features for the end when I use colored pencils. If you're somebody who uses colored pencil or you like using alcohol markers, but you've never tried the two together, then you don't know what you are missing. For example, maybe you mainly use colored pencils and you're trying to color in a large portion of the paper, and there's always those little tiny holes that the colored pencil has a really hard time getting to. Now, you can solve this problem by burnishing, which is basically just pressing down really hard on the paper, flattening the tooth of the paper. This can work out really nicely. The only problem is once you've burnished an area of the paper, you can't really put any more colored pencil on top of it. Another option would be to sharpen your colored pencil really sharp so that it's able to get into the little holes in the paper. It can be a bit tedious, and if you don't have the patience for that, well, I can understand. Or you can just do what I do and use alcohol markers as a base of color. If you put down a flat base of color that soaks into your paper, then there won't be any of the white paper exposed any longer. And you won't have to go through the process of filling in all the little spots that you missed with the colored pencil. And for me, it just helps me to relax and enjoy the process a bit more, but to each their own. Some people really enjoy the slow, methodical way. Now, taking a One Piece character, or any anime or cartoon character for that matter, and turning them into something more realistic, or at least semi-realistic, can be a bit difficult at first, because all a cartoon character or an anime character really is just taking an idea and simplifying it down to the point where there's not a lot of detail, but you can still understand what it's supposed to be. And what I'm doing here is basically just the opposite. I'm taking the basic features of a character and trying to picture what that would look like in real life, and then I let my brain fill in the details that are missing. This is also a great time for a reference. I'll find a reference for different faces, a reference for body types. I'll even take pictures of myself and use that as a reference. When you are trying to draw something akin to realism, then certain things have to be correct. When you're talking about basic anatomy, or definitely the lighting and shadows, it really doesn't take much to break the illusion that you are trying to create on the paper. The subconscious mind is really good at picking up little inconsistencies and letting you know that something is just not right. It's definitely interesting trying to keep all of these things in mind while staying true to how unique a One Piece character can be. There are certain features of a One Piece character that if you tried to keep those features the same and bring it into realism, then it just would look too uncanny. For this picture, I'm using a watercolor paper. Anytime I have to do a lot of layering, then I like to use a paper that's a bit thicker. So with this kind of paper, the marker will soak into the paper a lot more. The more pigment I use, the more it will soak into the paper and spread out a bit. This will make things look less sharp or out of focus. And in this picture, I wanted to use that to my advantage. So I am purposely keeping his hand a bit out of focus because I was hoping to create a bit of depth in the picture. And at the end, we'll see if it worked out. The only downside to doing a picture like this is that if you're using markers, well, you're going to use up a lot of your marker ink. A fresh and juicy marker will quickly turn to a sad and dry marker when you use a thicker paper. And that's why I really like using Copic markers. Now, I know Copic markers have sort of fallen out of favor as of late, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with how expensive they can be. And on top of that, I think people have a really hard time figuring out what to buy. They sort of get overwhelmed with the vast array of colors that you can choose from. And if you're just sort of sketching concepts or doing cartooning, then there are many other brands that you can choose from that will definitely get the job done. Another favorite of mine is Pro Marker Brush. Really great brand. But for something like this, Copic is my go-to marker. And one of the big advantages Copic has over other brands is that they are refillable markers. For every color, there is a bottle of juice that you can buy, as well as replacement nibs. And the process is actually fairly simple. Just make sure you have some alcohol handy in case you make a mess. And to save money, you can buy the smaller but cheaper versions of these markers and just buy the refillable ink for the markers you use more often. So considering the quality as well as the reusability of the marker, I think Copic gives you the most bang for your buck, and it's the reason why it's my favorite marker to use. This is a picture of Marshall D. Teach, also known as Blackbeard, and I'd say considering all of the other One Piece characters, he's definitely one of the easier characters to bring into this art style. I wanted to do a more recent version of Blackbeard, and I realized that this is definitely the coolest version of Blackbeard. Each time we see him, he seems to gain more jewelry and flashier clothes, and at this point, this is the height of his peacocking. And I could be wrong, but I can't remember a time in the anime or manga where this man is not laughing or smiling. Which is kind of funny because he's definitely one of the more pirate-like characters in the series. Unlike Luffy, instead of helping people and trying to do the right thing, he kind of just does whatever he wants, and a lot of the time, he just wants to take things. Whether he has to hurt somebody to do that, it doesn't really matter to him. And above all else, he cherishes the freedom that he gets from being a pirate, which is something that he has in common with Luffy. And as the series goes on, it seems like they're setting up these two characters to be polar opposites, who inevitably will clash. You know, from the outside, this is a series that just looks ridiculous and goofy, but the truth is, a lot of the themes in this show are quite serious. And even though there's a large number of characters in this series, it does a really good job at making all of those characters seem important. Even characters that we've only seen for a small amount of time, at the beginning of the series, eventually we see them again, and they get more development. And many of them play a huge role in the development of the story as a whole. There's a ton of interweaving narratives, conspiracies, and basically any kind of fantastical idea that you can think of seems to make its way into the story at some point. It makes a lot of sense that the series has such a large and diverse audience, and now with the success of the live-action series, I suspect it will only gain more traction. And I think it's well-deserved, considering you're talking about a series that's been going on for over 27 years. It's not very often that you get to see a narrative go on for that long and continuously get better and better. And it gets me excited, trying to figure out which One Piece character I want to draw next. Let me know in the comments who you'd like to see. If you want a better idea on how I use light sources to figure out where I put my shadows and my highlights, click on this video right here.